Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of BSing Sports. Here with me is Tim, as always, and Wednesday we have...
Welcome to Fantasy Football Weekly. Welcome.
I like
Right.
that.
Because it's weekly. Thank you, Robert Winans. His name is RZRXI, which stands for Razorback 11 on Twitch. If you like watching video games, you like watching funny content, go ahead and check him out. This show is also sponsored by Orphan Rivers, which is, they make the music every week for our show. So thank you to Orphan Rivers. Tim, so we had the trade deadline this past week. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here, and let's get right to it. TJ Hockenson, since he's going to be pretty relevant later in the show, traded to the Minnesota Vikings. What is the fantasy impact of this trade?
I think it's huge for the Vikings and like Kirk Cousins to have another weapon on the field like that. It impacts Justin Jefferson a lot, in my opinion. He's going to see more targets because they can't double cover Justin Jefferson when you got TJ Hawk running down the field too. Also, Adam Thielen is losing a step. I hate to say it, but he's still a pretty decent wide receiver. So he could benefit from TJ Hawkinson joining the offensive weapons over there with Dalvin Cook and everything. But I think the person who most benefits from it would probably, Kirk Cousins, one, to have another weapon. But two, I think Justin Jefferson benefits from it the most. What do you think, Guy?
I'm actually going to talk about the flip side here, so I'm glad that you touched on the Vikings. I'm going to touch on the fantasy impact from the Lions' perspective. So the Lions obviously felt as though they did not necessarily need TJ Hockenson for their offense to succeed, and I agree with that outlook. I think that they were definitely producing on their end and that they can use this draft capital to boost up their defense. However, from a fantasy outlook, I think the big winner here is Josh Reynolds. This dude, obviously, he's kind of playing second fiddle to Amon-Ra St. Brown. DJ Chark hasn't really played in a while. Who knows when he's going to come back healthy. Josh Reynolds should see the uptick in targets here. Yes, I know Amon-Ra St. Brown will also see more targets, but how many more targets can Amon-Ra St. Brown see that he's not already seeing? So I think Josh Reynolds is definitely the big winner here on the Detroit side of this trade. And then James Mitchell, who was a rookie fifth-round pick, tight end out of Virginia Tech. His specialty, I guess you could say, is run after catch, so getting the ball in his hands. Apparently, he's very dynamic. I don't think that this is a trade. I don't really know who he's comped to because I didn't really pay attention too much to him in college. So, but I think that, he's also a minor winner in this. It really depends on who they're going to use in that offense, whether it be Brock Wright or James Mitchell. But I think Josh Reynolds is definitely the big winner here. In my opinion, he's going to see the uptick in targets from Jared Goff now that TJ Hockenson is gone. Let's see, other fantasy relevant trades. This one's actually kind of interesting because it applies more to you and I, Tim, as dynasty players. Calvin Ridley going to the Jags. I had been saying all along that they were going to draft Kayshon Boutte and he was going to be the number one receiver. I didn't think Christian Kirk was going to be the number one receiver long there. But Tim, what do you think, fantasy outlook, obviously, in the long term for this trade?
I mean, I think it benefits Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk, really. I mean, let's go back and talk about the Falcons real quick. Kevin Ridley didn't want to play for the Falcons for a while now. We all know that. It was good for the Falcons to get picks for him also. So, but let's go back to the fantasy side of it. I think it really benefits Trevor Lawrence next year for having a wide receiver one. And then two, it really benefits Christian Kirk from not taking all the cornerback ones like Darius Slay or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it benefits him to get better opportunities to receive the ball from a less talented cornerback as I try to my point of view. But yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence and Christian Kirk benefits the most. We're probably about even to me for them both.
Okay. Well, I do definitely see this benefiting Trevor Lawrence. I don't necessarily see it from a fantasy perspective benefiting Christian Kirk as much as you do. I think that this is an offense that pretty consistently spreads the football around anyway. I think Christian Kirk just happens to be, a little bit more talented than the rest of the receivers already on the roster. So that's probably why he's the most fantasy impactful. But as far as target share goes, I don't think that, 1 week it could be Zay Jones, 1 week it could be Marvin Jones. And this is a team, Travis Etienne's kind of taken over the last couple weeks. So, but from a Falcons point of view, you got to look at guys like Drake London and Kyle Pitts through the winners here for sure. I don't think anybody actually thought, or at least in my eyes, there were very few, if any, people that actually thought Calvin Ridley was going to suit up for the Falcons again. And that obviously did not come to fruition. So, but it's interesting what Calvin Ridley is going to be able to bring to the table because he hasn't played football in almost 2 years by the time he's going to step on the field again. So it'll be a really interesting to see how he performs. I guess the good news for him is he's not doing it in the middle of the season. He gets a full off season to, train with Trevor Lawrence and whatnot. But yeah, what would your expectations as a dynasty manager be for Calvin Ridley?
I don't like where what rank he's put. I think he replaced next year. Wide receiver 1, wide receiver
Just
2.
what do you think his fantasy impact is long term? Like, do you think he's ever going to be that dominant wide receiver 1 again? Do you think that maybe he's just a wide receiver 3 at this point? Is he ever going to be fantasy relevant at all?
I think he will be fantasy relevant. When Julio Jones was in Atlanta, he was still fantasy relevant there. I think he had the potential to be a high-end wide receiver 2, the bottom floor wide receiver 3 max. I don't see him going any lower than that, in my opinion. I think he had a lot of talent still. I guess the right situation could help him. Right coaches could help him.
For sure. Super CNB Challengers in the chat says, yo, what up, man? We're here to talk some fantasy football. So if you got any questions for us, feel free to let us know. We'll try and give you as much insight as we can based on the information that we hold. In the meantime, let's talk about the quarterback market real quick. So I sent you a picture earlier. We'll actually talk about this now. Screw it. I kind of wanted to hold off on the 2023 thing because dynasty managers everywhere know all about the 2023 class. Hell, I think even redraft managers do at this point too. I wanted to talk about this picture I sent you earlier. So the first, I guess, unofficial rankings came out this week for 2023, projected draft class. And we highlighted some of the fantasy relevant first round picks that were going to be in there. Real quick, Super CMB Challenger says Bengals, Colts, Chiefs, Seahawks, Vikings D this week, ? Oh, well, doesn't matter to me who they're playing. You can take the Seahawks defense out of it. They're horrible. Actually, you know what? I stand corrected there. I looked earlier. Did you know, as bad as they are in real life, the Seahawks defense is number 2 in fantasy?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
I was looking at that stat. I was looking at that stat earlier. I'm like, what the hell?
Oh, God. So I have the Bengals starting in one league, and I think the Colts starting in another. I only play in 2 leagues where I play in 3 leagues where defenses are started, but I have the Colts starting in one and the Bengals starting in another.
I have the Chiefs starting in one. I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm probably my best option. But out of these 4 teams, I'm gonna probably go with the.
See, it depends for me because if Ryan Tannehill plays, I do think that the Vikings can, or not the Vikings, the Titans can at least semi put up a fight, score some garbage time points. Maybe. I mean, Derrick Henry's still there. So if Ryan Tannehill plays, I'd probably go Vikings. I'm still not 100% sold on the Washington Commanders and their offense.
Yep. You took the
But
words
if
right out of my mouth.
Malik Willis is starting, I would 100% put the Chiefs defense in with confidence that they're going to, smash their over. I think right now they're projected like 9.1 points, depending on your scoring format. But I'm definitely looking for to see if Tannehill's starting this week or not. He did get some practice reps this week. It sounds like he might play, but yeah. So Super CMB Challengers also says, okay, I also traded away Pittman and Mostert to get Devontae Adams PPR. What you think? Appreciate y'all. First off, I think that I appreciate you, sir. And I think you need to go ahead and subscribe on YouTube because we are here every Wednesday at 6:30 answering fantasy football questions to the best of our ability for guys just like you. So thank you. We appreciate you for the questions. I think this is a fantastic trade.
Yep, I absolutely agree. With Sam Ellinger, kind of quarterback for the Colts, Michael Pittman didn't see that many targets last week. He was trying to run the ball like I guess you could say Jalen Hurts type of quarterback area, which he's not. Jalen Hurts is way better. But yeah, I definitely like Devontae Adams. He wide receiver 4, so good. That's a good trade for you, man.
That's an excellent trade. Good job in that category for sure. But yeah, so anyway, back to our list for you redraft players. I mean, you're going to get a little bit of insight here, ahead of your competitors if you're watching. So this list has Bryce Young at number 3 overall, Bijan at number 8, Bijan Robinson, running back Texas, CJ Stroud, quarterback Ohio State at 10 to round out the fantasy relevant top 10 players of the NFL draft. I thought that this was interesting. I don't know if you studied the 2023 class at all, Tim. But I thought that this was interesting because Bryce Young is profiling as a really small quarterback. So to see him in the top 5 and the first quarterback off the board is a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I thought CJ Stroud been playing better ball like lately to compare to Bryce Young. Maybe teams are realizing that Ohio State quarterbacks aren't turning out what they really need to be in the NFL. Maybe some teams are realizing that, and maybe that's why he got dropped off to rank 10.
Now, the whole thing is interesting to me. Actually, I think CJ Stroud at 10. I mean, obviously, it all depends on which teams draft where, right? But CJ Stroud at 10 kind of fits the bill for me. I think, and I've kind of been keeping this a secret, I think Will Levis is the first quarterback off the board. Quarterback from Kentucky. Just the way that the ball comes out of his hand, his arm strength is different. He profiles as a size ready quarterback. He's got all the intangibles that you'd want. He's not too much of a runner. He's kind of a pocket passer, but I think with the right coaching and maybe sitting a year behind somebody, Will Levis could be somebody special in the NFL. So I think that he's the first quarterback off the board, in my opinion. But Captain Joe King on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, Captain Joe King. Hi, loving the stream. He puts in capitals. Thank you. My team, quarterback Kirk Cousins, running backs Eckler, Henry, wide receivers Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Kadarius Toney, tight end Taysom Hill. I have the option of trading D-Hop for Chubb. Should I do it? Record 6-2.
No, I wouldn't do it.
My answer is no. You're paper thin at wide receiver already. I think the fact that you mentioned Kadarius Toney as your third wide receiver to me means you should. If I was you, I'd be very uncomfortable with my wide receivers. I don't know who you have on the bench. If you could hook us up in the comments, it'd be awesome. But if Kadarius Toney is really your third best wide receiver, I'm looking at taking a step back from Derrick Henry to a little bit lesser of a running back and also gaining a wide receiver on the side because I don't know your league setup. I'm assuming 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. But that would make me very uncomfortable that Kadarius Toney is my third wide receiver. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, Ryan, you took the words out of my mouth. I'm looking to trade. If Kadarius Toney is your third wide receiver, we don't have anything better. I would definitely trade Henry. I'll try to go get like a Ramon Stevenson and like a maybe like a Tyler
Mike-
Boyd type area.
I mean, you might even be able to get an upgrade from there at this point.
I like
I
Lamont
think you
Stevenson
could
a
probably
lot.
do. I think you could probably do better than Tyler Boyd in redraft, especially with Ramondre. I think Ramondre and somebody like Michael Pittman, somebody who has a
Okay.
pretty safe floor but his upside's kind of limited. I think that would probably be something that I would try to attack because it is, Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler, whichever one you decide to trade. I personally would trade Derrick Henry, but
Yeah, I would trade Derrick Henry. He's getting a little bit more work in the passing area, but Austin Eckler gets all the work in the passing area really, and that he gets explosive right off the ball, gets a lot of goal line work. He fantasy running back one, and he had a bye week last week. That just told you something.
yeah, no, that's an insane stat right there. I'm glad that you touched on that. He's fantasy running back one, PPR, obviously, and he had a bye week last week. Like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, none of them had their bye week yet. Their bye weeks are this week, and they still couldn't catch up to him. So that's how far and away he is ahead of everybody. That's an interesting one. So, yeah, good question, though. I would not take that trade. I would look to maybe upgrade that wide receiver room a little bit, though. Super CMB Challengers comments again, not fantasy related, but how do you feel about the Bradley Chubb trade? I'm a Broncos fan, and obviously giving him up sucks, but I think they got good value for him in return. Tim, I'll let you go ahead and start on the Bradley Chubb thing. We kind of touched on this in our show yesterday, but
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm sorry to hear that you're a Broncos fan. But yeah, I said yesterday, Vine pointing out it was a good trade for both teams, but he's on his 5th year of the contract, and the way they're playing right now, he wouldn't want to stay in the free agency area, in my opinion. Yeah,
yeah, man, it's rough.
He went to a Super Bowl contending team, and that's great for him. I think it's a win-win trade. After I really looked at it, Ryan broke it down to me yesterday on our
on our show, we actually talked about it yesterday. Of course, we'll talk about it today because you asked so nicely. But yeah, if you want to check out our show from yesterday, we recapped Week 8. We recapped the trade deadline. So
that's
go
what
ahead
I
and
was
check
looking
it
for.
It is on
Recap.
Yeah,
I couldn't figure out recap.
it's okay. My take on the Bradley Chubb trade, I think both sides won this deal. Look, here's the reality of the situation. The Denver Broncos just breed good defensive talent. It's who they are. They've had, good defense since the end of Peyton's career. It hasn't really been bad since then, but they're struggling on offense. They really are. And for a guy, Bradley Chubb, who's in the last year of his contract, he was very obviously not going to re-sign with Denver. Go ahead and get what you can for him. And that being a 1st and a 4th round pick, I think that's a massive return for a guy in a contract year. So I think that they did an excellent job, kind of shedding what they could. I'm a little bit surprised that Jerry Jeudy's still with them, but I think that if the Broncos come out flat next year, he'll be a trade target for sure because he'll be in the 4th year of his contract.
So I got a question for you, Vine.
Mm-hmm.
Since Las Vegas Raiders already told Josh Jacobs that they're not re-signing him for his 5th year, why wouldn't they trade him and try to get something out of him?
You know what? That's a fantastic question.
Because I had an argument with Joey about it, and the other Joey's league that you're not in, and he's a Raiders fan, so he wouldn't accept what I was saying.
What'd you say?
I said, if he's not going to come back next year, why won't you trade him now? You're losing to begin with. Trade him. Go get the way he's playing right now. Go get a 2nd or a 1st, and see what you can get it out of him. Like get picks for him when he's not good.
I kind of agree with what you're saying. Hold on, let me finish real quick here though to touch on CMB Challenger's question. I think that Miami, this instantly upgrades them to Super Bowl contender, though. That Bradley Chubb trade I talked about a little bit yesterday. They were really a pass rusher away from having a decent defense. If you watch Miami with the eye test, you can't really look at stats when it comes to something like this. You got to watch their defense. The only way that they can get pressure on the quarterback is by rushing 5 or more pass rushers. And you can't really have a formula where you have success for a long term by constantly blitzing, and that's the only way you can get pressure. Now with Bradley Chubb on one side and Jalen Phillips on the other, they can relentlessly get pressure on the quarterback with 4 down linemen. That is going to be massive for guys like Xavier Howard. That's going to be massive for Byron Jones. Unfortunately, Brandon Jones, the free safety, is out for the season, but I think that this helps elevate Miami, who has already beaten Buffalo without Bradley Chubb, to Super Bowl contender relevancy. So that's a good question. Tim Hawkins on YouTube says, Chuba Hubbard going to have any fantasy relevance, or did Foreman completely take over? I think anybody that thought Chuba Hubbard was going to have any sort of long-term fantasy relevance, and by long-term I mean for rest of season, is kind of they were asleep during the whole time that CMC was hurt. Look, this is a guy that was given full reins the previous year when CMC was absent most of the season, and he wasn't even fantasy relevant then. So while they still had Chuba Hubbard on the roster, the Panthers went out of their way to go sign another running back in case Christian McCaffrey wasn't there. That told me everything I needed to know about Chuba Hubbard, is that he was not going to have a role. And they went out and got a guy who was cheap, a backup to Derrick Henry, and looked pretty damn good doing it. So to me, I don't think that Chuba Hubbard was ever going to be fantasy relevant, even when he went down. But I just don't think that I don't think anybody that thought Chuba Hubbard was going to be fantasy relevant really paid attention to what was happening either last year or in the offseason. Tim?
I mean, I hate the way you said it, but you're right. Because I bought Chuba Hubbard in one of my trades a couple weeks ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on the show with a loser.
Just kidding.
But Chuba Hubbard.
I mean, he was a young running back, and I knew running back at the time. So it is what it is. And
desperation will cause a fantasy manager to do crazy things. I've been there before.
But yeah, you're right. I should have realized that they signed their running back in the offseason. And Foreman did amazing when Derrick Henry was hurt. They kept that running game going, and they ended up being the 1 seed in the playoffs, even with Derrick Henry being hurt. So Chubb won't get any playing time, I don't think, until Foreman needs a break. And that's about it. Foreman's going to get fed the ball nonstop.
Yeah, especially with the way that their offense has exploded since Chuba Hubbard's gone on the sideline. They actually look okay. I know nobody really thought that would happen when CMC got traded, but Super CMB Challenger says, man, I hope next year the Broncos can do something. Hopefully Russ gets settled into the offense, Hackett gets fired, and Pat Surtain, Judy, and everyone develop, and Javonte back. You're going to hate it because you're a Broncos fan. I wouldn't hold your breath about Javonte. He's got the same exact kind of injury that J.K. Dobbins has, and if you look at his trajectory at this point in time, it should scare a lot of Broncos fans and a lot of Javonte fantasy owners at this point. It should terrify them. This is not a good outlook for Javonte, watching J.K. Dobbins, kind of have to get babied back and then still re-injure the knee to the point where he has to have microsurgery again. I would be absolutely horrified if I was a Javonte owner, and even more horrified if I'm a Broncos fan, because Javonte has all the talent in the world. I just don't – I know he's young, so he has the chance to bounce back just like J.K. Dobbins does. However, right now, what we're seeing is not a good sign.
Yeah.
Running backs in fantasy kill people.
Yeah, but the biggest thing he said was Hackett getting fired.
Yep.
That definitely got to happen.
Yeah.
That's a big definitely. And then I think eventually Russ didn't look as terrible as he did in the past week, this last week. So eventually he's going to work back into the old system, trying to figure it out. But the big thing with Russ is he was the scrambler and waited for the big plays to open up. And that's not what the Denver offense is.
Yeah,
so,
I don't know what – I mean, we all know what the Denver Broncos problem is. It's their head coach.
Yep.
If your GM is having to come out and reassure people that, their head coach is the right guy and that you're sticking by him 7 games into his head coaching career, that's a major red flag, and that's a huge issue for the Denver Broncos moving moving forward. I would be terrified. We do have a fan question. I apologize. I'm not even going to take a shot at this name. But the question is, half PPR, do I trade Brady, Jonathan Taylor, and Chris Godwin for Joe Burrow, Mike Evans, and Khalil Herbert? My other running backs are Kamara, Connor, Fournette, and Gus. Man.
It's tough.
I'm probably going Brady's side here. I think I'm going to go Brady's side here. Look, Joe Burrow's been absolutely fantastic for fantasy. I think he's the QB3. Half PPR. Yeah, I'm definitely going to go that Brady side. Look, JT's injury has kind of pissed everybody off that's owned him, myself included, because I do have a share of Jonathan Taylor. Although what I traded to give up for him, kind of has fallen flat on its face too. So that makes it feel a little bit better. Maybe to one Timothy Brandt for DeAndre Swift, Allen Robinson, and a 23 first. Have fun with that.
I got rid of Swift for Breece Hall.
Yeah, that's a major dub. But yeah, I'm taking that Brady side. Look, Brady has been a lot worse in real life than he has in fantasy. The Buccaneers still throw the football relentlessly. JT is going to come back. He has no Naheem Hines, so it's going to be him and Deion Jackson, where JT is going to get 70% of the backfield snaps. And Chris Godwin's and Mike Evans kind of parallel to me. I guess Evans probably has a little bit more touchdown upside, but I'm probably going to stick with the Brady side. I think Khalil Herbert still being in an obvious timeshare with David Montgomery and now Justin Fields, who's going to run the ball 10 plus times a game, kind of limits his ceiling a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm taking the Brady side. I think Brady targets Mike Evans in the red zone more than Chris Godwin, but Godwin gets everything else between the 20s. I see Brady trying to make big plays to Mike Evans, but nothing really inside the 20 like Chris Godwin gets. So I think for half PPR, I think Godwin, JT, and Brady decided to go with that, man.
Yeah, and then you touched on it in the comments there, sir. I apologize, I can't pronounce your name. You said Swift did not practice today, and then you said, JT. The funniest thing is neither did Swift. Swift didn't practice either. I'm not super concerned about JT's long-term outlook in terms of rest of season. It wouldn't shock me if he missed this week, but I feel like it would be more precautionary than anything. If you're super, super, super desperate to make a move at running back, then maybe do this. But I feel like that you're giving up a world of upside in JT for Khalil Herbert, who's capped by two other guys who are going to have 10 plus carries a game. I definitely would go JT side here. I mean, with no Naheem Hines, he's the only true pass catching back in the backfield. He's going to get a lot of work. The Colts are going to rely on him. Look, as bad as the Colts have been, they probably feel like that they can make a playoff run, which is why they switched quarterbacks. The AFC South hasn't been, world beating to this point. So, I mean, the Titans are 5-2, I believe, but I mean, they're not a great 5-2. So it's such a weird situation in Indianapolis right now with Sam Ehlinger being quarterback, and that could just mean more for JT. So outside of this week, I'm not super concerned. Injuries happen to everybody every week. Khalil Herbert could go on a long run Sunday and tear his ACL. I mean, the running back market is so fragile. My mom says, "Go Eagles." Damn right, Mom. But yeah, so let's move on. Ty says, "Wow, I can't believe my Stafford comment was passed over." Yeah, dude, my bad. We're busy. Deal with it. So, Tim, do you want to do starts and sits now?
Or
do
we missed another comment up top with CJ.
Oh, okay, yeah. Super CMB Challenger says, I got to head out, but one more question. Is Brian Robinson going to do anything rest of season, or is he droppable for the right waiver pickup? Depends on what the right waiver pickup is. It sounds like Brian Robinson's probably going to consistently get, 12-ish touches in that backfield. He's the primary running back. He gets the goal line work, so it really depends on what you mean by the right waiver pickup. But I think he has a pretty safe floor in terms of touches in that offense.
Yeah, I agree with that, Ryan. I have him in one league. I traded you for him actually. So yeah, for the right waiver pickup, it's definitely possible. But other than that, look, it's Hold'em. Depends. It depends.
Tim Hawkins also says, "My bad, guys. We missed a bunch of comments. Jesus, how did the trade for the Dolphins make for Wilson impact Mostert and Edmonds to Denver? L. Murray."
Latavius Murray.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm trying to piece together. Okay. So Jeff Wilson. All right. So Edmonds to Denver. I feel like Edmonds is still kind of
The
a
backup.
wait and see at best. He might be fantasy irrelevant. I would definitely prepare for that. He's still behind Melvin Gordon. I think if I had to see something unfolding, I would say Melvin Gordon gets probably 40 to 45%. And then Latavius Murray and Chase Edmonds probably split the rest. But I don't know. That whole backfield right now is kind of wait and see. I would desperately flex Melvin Gordon if you need to this week, just because it has been announced that he still is the starter according to the GM. So if
He's on bye. Don't
Yeah.
flex him. He's on bye.
Oh yeah. Denver's got their bye this week. I forgot that there's like 6 teams on bye this week. There's a ton of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, tell me about it. My fantasy teams are taking a hit.
Yeah, no kidding. My running backs we're looking paper thin here. I know you're going to talk about it later, but I'm starting a couple of the running backs. You're telling people to sit. So
I mean, if you have to, you have to.
yeah, it is. Bye weeks are unavoidable. It is what it is.
Exactly.
Okay, we got another question from Dylan on YouTube. Thank you, Dylan. Please don't be afraid to subscribe and share us with your friends. We are here every Wednesday, 6:30 Eastern Time, answering all fantasy football questions. Who wins the trade of Justin Jefferson and Darrell Henderson for Ramondre and Keenan? Oh, my God.
Justin Jefferson wins no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, you could put Darrell Henderson on the other side of this trade, and Justin Jefferson wins pretty comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's probably top 3 in the NFL right now.
Yeah, Justin Jefferson's a guaranteed. And Ramondre's come on very strong, so I understand the appeal. But whoever gave up Jefferson for Keenan Allen, who is, might miss this week again, we'll talk about it a little bit later. And Ramondre, I think they made a grave mistake. It's the Jefferson side here for me by the widest of margins.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I'm saying at least 2 football length margins for Justin Jefferson, man. Go get him back if you traded him, man. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. If you traded him away, claw, beg, offer to pay their buy-in fee next year. I mean, do whatever you can to go get him back. But if you want this trade, just take the key, swallow it, and run away, because good job.
Yeah.
About that time, Tim. We're gonna jump into it.
Yeah, I go first this time. You went first last week.
Okay. My bad, dude.
Yeah, get it right. Yeah, but I'd like to point out my Davante Adams take last week.
Listen, okay, so for those of you watching this dude told everybody to sit Nick Chubb and Davante Adams last week, and George Kittle. But Davante Adams sitting, like, the fact that worked out was wild. I mean, that's wild. So good job, Tim. Proud of you there. I hope you don't do anything that bold again. Also, I would like to point out that this man told everybody to sit Nick Chubb on live YouTube and started Nick Chubb himself. So he's a fraud anyway.
I mean, I had to start him. I had no other running backs.
Yeah, sure you did. Real convenient.
Yeah, I still won my jersey too, so it don't matter either way.
Yeah, no kidding. Sorry, Davis. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and do sit-ems first this week.
I'm going to pull this big screen up.
Yep, go for it. I got comments.
All right, so the first person I'm sitting is Jared Goff. He's playing the 6th best ranked defense against quarterback, as in the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have only allowed a 92.6% to all quarterbacks this year so far. And yeah, they're losing TJ Hawk. They're losing a weapon, but like Ryan said earlier, they're going to have Josh Reynolds go and pick up the slack with probably DeAndre Swift is hurt, so Jamal Williams will probably get more passing receiving yards. But I still saying Jared Goff against a strong defense who held the Buffalo Bills to 28 points.
The Packers actually have the number 1 rated pass defense in the NFL. So I think that's a pretty good sit. Now, to preface for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or those of you watch, we're avoiding the super obvious, starts and sits. Like, don't forget to start, I said I'm personally avoiding the super obvious ones. I don't know what Tim's got going on here, whatever formula he uses to tell people to sit Nick Chubb and Devontae Adams, but I'm going to let him do his
thing. Man. The running back I'm sitting is all Ravens running backs. They haven't had a set snap share yet, and that's been bothering me with Kenyon Drake and Just Edwards. And the Saints are ranked 9th overall against all the running backs. They only allowed 4.6 yards per wrestling attempt. That's a great stat for 8 games right now for the running backs who they played. Josh Jacobs. I don't know who else they played. They played Dalvin Cook.
They've played Fournette once.
Exactly. Like, they played some good running backs who only allowed 4.67 yards per rush.
Hang on 1 second, Tim. Tim Hawkins asks, is there a timetable for Jameson Williams' return yet? If you have Jameson Williams in redraft, you can very comfortably drop him at this point. If you have him in Dynasty, he's probably not playing this season. The comments that Dan Campbell made the other day makes it sound like that he will not play this season. They said he's not even close to a return. He might get 1 or 2 games at the end of the year just to get, the NFL game speed under his belt. But I would not expect that Jameson Williams plays to the point where he has any fantasy relevance this year. So if you're playing in redraft, comfortably drop him. Dynasty, he's a stash for next year.
The wide receiver I'm setting at Mike Evans. With Tom Brady not playing as he used to be, Mike Evans been dropping a lot of deep, wide open passes. Some of it's his fault, some of it's not. I'm not saying it's all his fault. But he most likely is going to face Jalen Ramsey. Last time they played, each other, Evans only caught 2 passes out of 9 passes from Tom Brady, and Jalen Ramsey did allow 88 yards on the 2 passes, but it's not a great stat for fantasy relevance. 2 passes for 88 yards. I think maybe it's 10 points total, maybe a little bit more, but nothing too big. I cannot see my tight end right now, so give me 1 second. I gotta scroll down.
Dude, Jesus, what are you doing?
Oh, be quiet. I ain't perfect.
Why not?
I don't really use computers.
That's fair.
The tight end I'm saying, we talked about him a little bit earlier from the from the Minnesota Vikings now. TJ Hawkins. Washington is ranked first against tight ends. They haven't allowed many touchdowns. Plus with TJ going on a new team, they're going to be problem with connections early with concussions. They got to see what routes he can run the best and everything like that. So I wouldn't expect too much from TJ Hawkinson from the first week.
Yeah, I think that's a solid take. And if you're desperate, you got other tight ends on buys, or with the tight end market being the way that it is, you have to start TJ Hawkinson. I would definitely temper your expectations. New team, there's going to be all kinds of issues. So to the stardoms.
1 second, Ryan. Tim Hawkins have another question. Is there a timetable?
We just answered that.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I said, hold on, Tim, and then I talked about it for like a minute and a half.
I don't remember that at all. I'm sorry. Never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, good. So yeah, week 9 stardoms. It is week 9, right?
Yes.
Okay, that was the thing I was the most worried about. Good Lord. QB, I know this was a sit-em last week, but this week he is a stardom. Trevor Lawrence. There's been questions about Trevor Lawrence's play this year. Look, he's basically still a rookie. I mean, he didn't get any, real coaching last year, so it's kind of hard to hold that against him. Jacksonville was just a complete mess. But Trevor Lawrence this year, QB9 on the season, so he is, on pace to finish as a QB1. And the Raiders are the worst defense against quarterbacks in fantasy by almost 1.5 per game. That's a substantial margin when you're talking about the difference between 1 and 2. I expect this game to be a little bit of a shootout. So go ahead and start Trevor Lawrence with confidence this week. You could really start all of the Jacksonville Jaguars with confidence this week. I'll get into one a little bit later, but the Raiders defense is awful against all positions in fantasy. And then for the running backs.
Before you go to running backs, Tim Hawkins had another question.
Okay.
Tyler Higbee or TJ Hawkinson?
Higbee, comfortably.
Yep, I agree with that. Like I said, TJ, going to a new team, there's going to be some connection issues with that.
Higbee was almost my stardom. I'll talk about who my stardom was, but Higbee was almost my stardom. I think that the team that he's going up against this week, I think Tampa, they're like 6th or 7th allowed most fantasy points to tight ends. So it's definitely Higbee for me this week. My stardoms for running backs are all Packers running backs, and I mean Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Look, Aaron Jones has been coming on the last couple weeks, while A.J. Dillon has kind of been a slouch there for a little while, almost the whole season, really. We expected a little bit more of him. However, this past week, Aaron Jones really got to show out, and A.J. Dillon finally saw the field. He had 10 carries for 54 yards, so the fact that he's getting a little bit more involved with the offense means that the Packers might be trying to figure this out. So normally I would say that Aaron Jones is probably an RB2 with RB1 upside, and A.J. Dillon's a desperation flex play. However, I would say that this week against Detroit, who allows the second most fantasy points to the running back position, I would say that Aaron Jones is comfortably an RB1, and A.J. Dillon is a very solid flex play with some RB2 upside, so you can go ahead and insert them in your lineup with confidence. I know A.J. Dillon's probably a little bit more touchdown dependent, but I think that the Packers will willingly move the football down the field, particularly if Allen Lazard is back in. So I can comfortably say you can start the Packers running backs this week. Wide receiver.
Allen Lazard practiced fully today. No restrictions. Yep.
Okay, that's good news for Packers fans, because I know that he's not really a number one wide receiver, but he is their number one wide receiver, and they need him on the field. Wide receiver, Josh Palmer, Mike Williams is definitely out. He's out for probably the next 4 weeks or so. And Keenan Allen, it does not sound like that he's going to play this week. It sounds like that he is going to miss more time. The reports are that his hamstring may have gotten worse over the bye week, which is weird to say. But even Brandon Staley said after practice today that Keenan Allen's hamstring is not where they want it to be, and he did not practice this week. So for me, with Keenan Allen looking like he's going to be out and Mike Williams definitely out, Josh Palmer is wide receiver 1 for the Chargers against a Falcons defense that allows the second most points to wide receivers this year. So this is a good stardom for sure. Tight end, I kind of don't. Go ahead.
Let me talk real quick. In redraft, Josh Palmer was probably on the waiver wire.
I said this on the fantasy show last week that Josh Palmer needed to be picked up because he was in concussion protocol week 7 and on bye week 8. So nobody was thinking about him. Mike Williams, even if Keenan Allen came back healthy, he would still be the wide receiver 2 in a high volume passing offense.
Absolutely.
So if you are on redrafting, you do not have Josh Palmer on your roster and he is on the waiver wire, you need to go get him. Tight end stardom, though, is Evan Ingram for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't like stacking same player, same team, but with the way that the tight end landscape has shaped out to be this year, it's so fragile. So it's difficult to say, who to really start, who to really sit. And a lot of those fringe players had some tough matchups this week, but not Evan Ingram. As I touched on earlier, the Raiders allow the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. And Evan Ingram's coming off a game where he just had 15.5 fantasy points, and he is tight end 10 on the year, and he's averaging just over 5.5 targets a game. So for a tight end landscape that's been kind of shifty and shady, he's got some consistent work there in a game that I touched on earlier. Should be a shootout. So go ahead and start Evan Ingram in your lineups as your tight end one with confidence this week. If you have an issue like a TJ Hawkinson or, something along those lines.
I like that take. I got Evan Ingram in one league. I'm about to start him in now. Thanks.
Yep. But yeah. So if you don't have any more topics you want to talk about, Tim, we can go ahead and wrap this show up.
Well, let's make a trade because I know you wanted David Montgomery off of me. Let's do one over air. Why not?
Okay. Yeah. Let's do some trade negotiating on air. Let's see how we do this.
Let me pull that out real quick.
What league did I ask for? Because I asked Bill for David Montgomery too. I actually didn't ask him yet. I just pinged interest. But what league was that?
No quotes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I definitely need some running back help there. So, for those of you that don't know, I'm accidentally semi-contending in this league. Justin Jefferson and AJ Brown kind of went off the first few weeks, so it didn't allow me to actually rebuild. Before we get into that, Parker from YouTube, thanks for checking in, Parker. We're here every Wednesday at 6:30, so if you go ahead and subscribe. And when we get to 100 subscribers, we are doing a free giveaway. So, hey, I have Najee and JT in a league, and I don't know what to do with them. At this point, Najee is a bench player, and JT has done nothing. Do you think I stash or sell low?
JT, I mean, it sounds like if you're stashing them at the Dynasty League to me. So,
yeah, is this
JT
redraft or Dynasty? My answer varies very differently.
Yeah, you're right. If it's redraft or Dynasty, that would probably help me out a little bit.
Because in redraft, I think he says it's redraft. So I think Najee's actually got a semi-safe floor. Like Najee's so weird because he gets enough touches that he's going to get you about 10 to 12 points a game. But that Pittsburgh offense with Kenny Pickett at quarterback, they're just not going to move the football enough to regularly score enough points, so he won't regularly have touchdown upside. I would probably be okay with moving off of Najee if the return was okay. If you can get, at this point, if you can get Tyler Boyd for Najee Harris and redraft, do it. With Jamar Chase potentially missing 4 to 6 weeks, and Boyd even being fantasy relevant before that, I think he was wide receiver 31 on the season, which I know isn't fantastic, but if you're starting 2 wide receivers in a flex, guess what? He's basically a regular flex play. So if you can make that trade, I would do that.
He's wide receiver 15.
Tyler Boyd? Oh, yeah, he was wide receiver 17 because he exploded for 8 catches, 155 yards. Yeah, so Tyler Boyd is, a fantastic trade target for somebody like Najee. There's got to be teams hurting for consistency at running back with the way everything's kind of shaped out to this point. So JT for me, though, is a stash. They just traded away Naheem Hines. It's going to be JT's backfield with a little bit of Deion Jackson sprinkled in. And I think that him being held out of practice today was a little bit more precautionary. He might sit one more week. We'll have to monitor his practices as the week goes along. However, this is going to be JT's backfield, especially with Ellinger at quarterback. They're not going to be in any sort of hurry to throw the ball 45 times a game. So I think that JT actually benefits from the quarterback change. He just needs to get on the field. I hope that it's this week, but I definitely think it'll be by next. Got a take on that, Tim? You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
My fault. I would
mute yourself. Jesus.
I was distracted with the dogs and everything. So whatever you said, I'm gonna probably agree with. We agree with a lot of things.
Thanks. He said I'm a genius. Everybody heard that, right? Okay. Thank you for the question, Parker. Like I said, if you have any more questions, we're going to be on for about 10 more minutes. If you don't for tonight, we're here every Wednesday at 6:30. Go ahead and give us a subscribe on YouTube. BSing Sports, it's right above me. And when we hit 100 subscribers, we're doing a free giveaway. So McCurley Wolf, I hope you heard that. And he asks a question. Y'all like Nick Chubb or Mondre and Pickens or Deontay Johnson, I'm going to assume. I'm probably going to lean Chubb here.
Yeah, I like Chubb. He's still wide receiver, not wide receiver. I think he's wide receiver 3 or 4 right now.
Running back.
Yeah.
Fucked it up
I
again.
did it again. Shit.
Um,
I still think he's running back 3 or 4, so I think he still had a lot of upside, even on bye week this week.
Deontay Johnson is definitely a no for me. It doesn't seem like that him and Kenny Pickett get along as well as Pickett and George Pickens do. So if I were to do this trade, it would be for Ramondre and Pickens. However, this would depend on my wide receiver room. If I was like a previous guy who asked the question, his third best wide receiver was Kadarius Toney. If I was in a situation like that, yeah, I would take this trade. But if you're not absolutely desperate for a wide receiver, go ahead and stick with Nick Chubb here. Once, Deshaun Watson comes back and that offense can open up a little bit more, because granted, Jacoby Brissett has not played awful. I'm not taking anything away from him, but that offense is going to open up substantially more when Deshaun Watson's under center. So give me Nick Chubb here. This is a guy that's going to get his regardless of what the score is, regardless of what the Browns do. But if you need wide receiver help and you're desperate enough, I'd go ahead and make that Ramondre and George Pickens trade. Definitely not Deontay Johnson, no.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He had another trade offer.
Yep, he says another trade offer, Diggs and Dobbs for Hopkins and Chase, PPR redraft. I think you're going to hate my answer to this trade. I'll let you answer first.
No, I'm taking DeAndre Hopkins and Chase.
Oh, yeah, that's the side I was going with too. Okay, good. So, look, without – go ahead. You know what? I'll let you take this whole thing. I got my own take to it, so go ahead.
Without Dobbs isn't looking like anything. He had one good week with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, but Hopkins looked like he's the wide receiver 1 for the rest of the year. When Chase gets back, he's going to be explosive. He's going to want the targets. He's going to open up that offense for him and Higgins and everything like that. I would definitely take Hopkins and Chase. Don't get me wrong, Diggs is a great choice. He's still wide receiver 2, I think, maybe 1, something like that. I'm not 100% positive.
He's wide receiver 2 or 3, I think. I know Tyreek Hill's number 1.
Then Cooper Kupp is 2, so Stephon Diggs is 3.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, so go ahead.
As a dynasty manager and players that regularly play dynasty, I kind of have been lower on Romeo Doubs than most. A lot of people were hype about Dobbs because of his landing spot, and I just don't buy that stuff. I kind of look at their pure talent, particularly when they're a rookie. So I'm going to read off Dobbs' stats. He had 8.8, 4.7, 20.3, 12.7, 5.9, 6.1, 0, and then 16.2 points. He's wide receiver 41 on the season. So if somebody is willing, I'm assuming that's basically like you're trading a healthy Dobbs for a hurt Chase. I'm taking the hurt Chase here. You know what, I'm going to assume that you're pretty good at wide receiver here. You can hold Chase until after the Bengals bye week when he probably comes back. I'm assuming that's why they didn't put him on IR, is because the plan is to bring him back after the bye week. But yeah, Hopkins is going to produce, man. I mean, Hollywood Brown will be back eventually to eat some of those targets. And I still believe that Hollywood Brown is the wide receiver 1 in Arizona. But they throw the ball so much with the inconsistencies that they've had at running back that Hopkins will easily get his own. I wouldn't be surprised if that's an offense that can maintain 2 high-end wide receiver 2s or even 2 low-end wide receiver 1s. So you're not losing too much going from Diggs to Hopkins, but Dobbs from Chase, man, is such an upgrade.
Huge, yeah.
I know that you're going to be without him for a couple weeks, but just hang tight, man. Chase is going to come back and light the world on fire. He has so much upside. It's unbelievable. But yeah, good question, Mr. Wolf, sir. So I see that you subscribed and liked. Thank you so much. If you have any friends that play fantasy football and you don't want to keep our secrets from them, you can go ahead and tell them about us as well. Parker comes back and says JT and Najee for Eckler. Redraft, PPR, my other running backs are Foreman, Hubbard, and Hines. I am not doing that. And I know it looks good on paper. You're trading JT, who's kind of been hurt, a little inconsistent and Najee, who's been very inconsistent for the RB1 in on the season. Eckler is 1 ACL tear away from your running back room being complete trash if you do this trade. I mean, it would just be the worst running back room and the worst situation to be in. So I wouldn't do this trade. I would look to move Najee maybe for a wide receiver or something, or a different running back. Maybe package Najee and a little bit of something extra for a Ramondre Stevenson, somebody who's outproducing him but isn't, totally in another stratosphere. But I wouldn't do this because if Eckler gets hurt, JT can provide maybe a hair less upside when he's healthy, especially now that they just traded Nyheim Hines away. But if Eckler gets hurt and you make this trade, man, that's going to kill your running back room. You'll basically be screwed for the season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan. JT's going to get healthy. They're going to figure it out with him. He's going to get the touches eventually. I like that Najee and maybe like Hines.
It depends on his wide receiver. So if you can sprinkle in like a wide receiver 3 that's got a little bit of upside, like
Tyler Boyd.
If you're solid on wide receivers, like if you have a Josh Palmer and you're solid on wide receivers, go ahead and throw him in there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I like that.
But so thanks for the questions, Parker. That for sure helped us out. So do you want to do this on-air trade?
Let's make it quick.
Okay, I'll give you 6 firsts. No, I'm just kidding. So for those of you that don't play Dynasty, we're about to make a Dynasty trade. So, or at least we're about to talk about one. I don't know if we're going to make it. So,
send me an offer first because you want them.
Yeah. So Parker says I have really good wide receivers. D-Hop, Waddle, also got people like Juju. Yeah, if you can package Najee and Juju for a better running back, then I would do that. Parker says I don't play Dynasty, so I'm interested to see this. I kind of stopped playing redraft because I do like fantasy football is like truly a hobby for me, and Dynasty is not for everybody. You have to be invested in the long term to play. You have to be invested in fantasy football to play Dynasty. So if you're not one of those guys that's actually going to be committed to, paying attention to the off-season news or even the in-season news on an almost daily basis, checking your teams constantly, Dynasty is not for you. It's an investment. So I understand why a lot of people don't play it. So you're rebuilding, and I guess I'm semi-contending. I just need some running back help a little bit. Although I have lost 4 games in a row. This is going to be interesting.
That's rough.
Yeah. So let me take a gander at your team. I don't want to send something stupid, something you don't need. So he has Brian Robinson and Travis Etienne. Now, Travis Etienne's untouchable. Even if you're rebuilding, he's got value through the roof. Brian Robinson, I'm not willing to pay the price that he is at right now. His market's a little higher than I would like it to be. So David Montgomery is my choice of running back. Also, I'm the Khalil Herbert owner. So
I did notice that, yeah.
Yeah. I see you're terrible. God, you're horribly off at quarterback.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so he has Justin Fields, Matt Ryan, and Tyler Huntley. He has 1 quarterback in a Superflex league, which is good for me because I have Matt Stafford and Justin Herbert, Ryan Tannehill, and Andy Dalton. I've got 4 starters.
Okay.
What I'm going to be looking
wide receiver too.
What'd you say?
I said I'm terrible at wide receiver too.
Yeah,
I guess I'm not as bad as that.
You're okay at receiver. You got Moore and Pittman. Dobbs. Yeah. I mean, it's a shame Cooks didn't get traded, but it is what it is. So right off the bat, as somebody who is kind of looking to unload the roster space, I'm definitely looking at sending him a quarterback, whether that be Dalton or Tannehill. Obviously, I'm not going to send Stafford or Herbert for David Montgomery.
I'll take either of those, really.
Yeah, I'm probably going to lean on sending you Dalton. And the reason that I would lean on sending him Dalton, I know for redraft players that might sound a little weird, but the thing is with David Montgomery is he's in a contract year. This is a guy who has basically relied on volume throughout his career to be fantasy relevant. He's not particularly efficient. He's not an otherworldly talented running back. And at the end of the season, he has no contract. The Bears have not even indicated that they would be interested in re-signing him. I think that they're going to move on. Just like Andy Dalton, whereas in a super flex league, quarterback values are through the roof. Parker says, couldn't Dalton get benched for Jameis any week though? He could, but I don't think anybody thinks that that's going to happen. I think the opposite kind of happened at this point, especially after last week's convincing win against the Raiders. I think that pretty much cemented Dalton as a starter. But the long-term outlook on David Montgomery past this season is a little iffy. Given that it's a very deep draft class with running backs, and given that there is going to be, a world of talent on the free agency. I mean, I sent a list of the free agency. It has Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, two guys really performing out of their minds compared to what they usually do, as well as a slew of other running backs. David Montgomery gives me like some very Melvin Gordon-esque vibes where he gets paired with somebody, gets limited touches for the rest of his career, doesn't really do a whole lot. So for me, it'd be Dalton for Montgomery. That would be my initial offer straight up, just because I know that he needs the QB help.
And believe it or not, I would accept because I need the quarterback help. I don't think my ceiling on the Montgomery is I won't get anything more from him because, like Ryan said, you don't know where he's going to be off next year, in my opinion. So if you want to send that trade, you did.
Yeah,
you were right on top of it.
Yeah. But yeah, so when you think about things like Dynasty, so the Dynasty leagues we play in are all super flex, which means that it's a regular flex, except you can also put a quarterback in there, and quarterbacks generally being the highest scoring position in fantasy football means that their value is higher than any other position in fantasy football. Starting 2 quarterbacks a week, it gives you a huge advantage over everybody else. Whereas I just mentioned Tim only has 1 starting quarterback. He's kind of, limited in his options, and Justin Fields hasn't had his bye yet, I don't think. So if you didn't get another starting quarterback before then, you'd have been in some serious trouble.
I mean, I'm in a rebuild in that league, so I got plenty of picks to make up for it.
I still have plenty of picks in that league too. Parker asked, in Superflex, do QBs go in first round? Josh Allen is the in a dynasty startup for Superflex. Josh Allen's your 101 every single time. Then Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. Your young quarterbacks, your stud quarterbacks. At this point, you could even argue. Actually, I would think most of the first round's probably quarterbacks. So Jefferson, Chase,
Cup,
maybe Cup, and Diggs are probably the only players that are non-quarterbacks that go in the first round. Maybe Breece Hall next year, but with this ACL tear, that's going to put a little wrench in that. But yeah, in Dynasty, things are played out way differently because the quarterback values go up. You got to think that quarterbacks last longer than most players in football do. Running backs that, even in redraft, they give you headaches. So in Dynasty, imagine that. ETN's value shot through the roof. I wouldn't be surprised if ETN was a late second rounder. Probably, I would have him somewhere in there. Just because he does have a little bit of an injury history with that Lisfranc injury that for a running back that is a little bit concerning in the long run. But running backs are the least valued position in Dynasty because the turnover year from year, the injuries that running backs suffer, the fluidity of the position, I guess is the word I'm looking for. There's no true stability in the running back position. You talk about running backs, most of them give you a 2 to 3 year window. I mean, guys like Kamara and Zeke, who were RB1s for all of their career, are true unicorns. You look at Jonathan Taylor. Last year, he was considered the dynasty RB1, and this year, he's running back 33. He can't really stay on the field. They don't give him the touches. The position's just so fluid, and with more NFL teams seemingly going to running back by committees, it makes the position that much tougher. So running backs are a little weird in Dynasty, especially in Superflex. But yeah, those are good questions. So, but we're going to wrap it up here. Tim, do you have any closing comments?
Go Phillies.
Go Phillies. Yeah. So Parker, don't forget to subscribe. We'll be here next week. If you have any more Dynasty or redraft questions, we'll be here. And as always, this is BSing Sports. I am one of your hosts, Ryan. That is Tim. And we are signing out here at BSing Sports, where we do a little BS. We talk a whole lot of sports. Have a good night.